Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Teaching Outside the Box. We're your hosts, Jillian Willie.
And Eileen Edwards.
And today we have a very special guest, Ryan Asthiemer. And before Eileen introduces him, I have to say, Ryan, I always do like a little dance when we do our intro music. And it's nice to see someone else likes it too.
Yeah, it's a nice little jingle.
Sometimes I start and then I'm like, focus. So that you know what you're doing. Yep. So hello and welcome. And I am so excited to have Ryan Asthiemer here with us, the owner of Presence Projects. Ryan is a very talented spiritual teacher, one that I actually have worked with for a long time now. He offers presence mentoring in small groups, one-on-one. He teaches online courses that are focused on awakening, quieting of the mind, and enlightenment. He's actually one of my favorite meditation teachers as well. He leads sessions with Insight Timer app on Zoom and in virtual reality with Evolver. Has a presence community that meets on Zoom, which I have also been a part of. He has hundreds of hours of content on his YouTube channel and even supports many Facebook groups surrounding presence practices and being and staying in the now. So Ryan, thank you for coming. And could you just maybe explain a little bit more about yourself? I might have missed something, possibly.
Yeah, sure. Hello, and nice. Thank you for having me on here. I love the concept, the idea you guys are moving with your mission. I think it's very needed and beautiful. I'd say I'm kind of on the same page in a way, just in my own projects, but with the same intention of just helping spread, well, peace of mind, I guess. Summarize. It's just spread more peace around and self-awareness. You know, these things that I didn't learn until my early 20s that were so grounding, and they weren't taught in schools, and I wasn't taught by anyone. I kind of stumbled upon it, and now I live in a different experience of life than I used to, much more peaceful and content and happy. And so it feels natural to share that in all my various projects.
That's beautiful.
It is, absolutely.
Oh, one thing that wasn't mentioned. Yeah, I'm a father. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I get the parenting trials and tribulations and joys.
That's a challenging age for girls.
Mm, mm.
So I'm sure you're being put through some of that right now.
Yeah, I do have 7 younger sisters, so life gave me a little preparation, but still, there isn't enough preparation.
Nice training.
And no brothers, so lots of feminine energy.
Mhm.
Oh, that's rough.
Can I ask you a question? Eileen, when you were introducing Brian, you mentioned that that you lead some presence communities. What exactly does that look like? What does that mean?
Well, there's different ones. The smaller one that I do is for presence practitioners. So anyone who kind of is interested in exploring what presence is, the state of meditation, basically. And with that particular one, I mean, we have a topic, but really it's just kind of a support group, because in this journey and in this life of practice and such, there's so many obstacles we run into and so many challenges, and maybe you have a really bad day.
Whoa. I think it was him that froze this time, not me.
Oh, no.
while we're waiting for him to come back to, I have been part of the one he's talking about. So I can say it does run in a pretty small group most of the time. Could be anywhere from maybe 3 to 10 people, maybe meeting on Zoom. It's about twice a week. Just kind of checking in on the week. What were the challenges? Whoop, he got bumped. Let me back. What are the challenges that kind of arose? What did you do in that instance? What do you need? And then sharing of like our practice. That's kind of something that we've done consistently is like, what does your practice look like this week? Or what did presence look like for you this week? And of course, life, humans kind of fluctuates. So it's just a small group of adults. And it's nice because it feels like people who, we've talked about this before, people who get it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yay, he's back.
He's back. I was just telling her about the small group that meets on Zoom, kind of giving the details of what kind of comes up and what we discuss and how it's helpful. But at least I knew the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't know when it cut out. I was recording a YouTube video today, and it was a 30-minute live stream, and at the end of it, I published, or I like uploaded it or whatever, and it only saved 16 minutes. So the other 16 minutes is gone. It's like, oh, surrender practice. But yeah, technology.
Yeah, it's got to roll with it, right? Yeah, that's really cool. That's nice to have. Nice that you host that for other people too. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and one reason was because when I first got into these practices, I felt very alone. I felt like a lot of people around me weren't interested particularly in the language or in that sort of I don't know, approach. And so yeah, I had this sort of loneliness feeling, and so from that I had this and just intention to help foster community around it, so other practitioners can not feel like they're the only ones. Even though, I mean, there is something to be said about like the group that meets with me is, or on the weekends, all over the world, in Ireland and various parts of the US. So it's a global little family. And it kind of shows, like, in a lot of ways we're very spread out in some ways, but with technology you can, and VR too is same idea. It's a global community. It's so easy. It's much easier to have a more intimate relationship and connection and such, fellowship, as they might call it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Needed.
Absolutely. Something that I know I needed, and I'm very grateful to have had, still have. Could you tell us a little bit about your like path? How did you get here? So we know where you are now, but how did you get here?
Oh, there's a long story. And there's a short story. I suppose I could summarize it. Well, the short answer is suffering. When I was in my early adult life, actually I was 19 when I found out I was having a baby, and that catapulted this very different approach to reality of, it's not all about me anymore, and taking on responsibility and kind of shaking off all my bad habits, so to speak, or younger habits, because now I got to take care of my little one, and that made me grow up a lot. But I was still in a lot of suffering. I had a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. I actually, one thing I had a lot of back then too was paranoia. My mind would run off into really wild, crazy scenarios, and when that would happen, I didn't realize how exhausting that was to my energy, to my emotional energy, and it kind of all, that all that suffering kind of just built up into a point of a break, of like I don't know, And I just really was seeking something, some kind of help, some kind of relief. And that's what my mom actually gave me the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart. And it was the piece of the puzzle I was looking for, clicked, and uh, was immensely helpful. And even though, I mean, it clicked in ways, but then there was also like, it kind of sparked a spiritual journey of exploring different teachers and life. I enjoy studying all the various religions and modalities, and open in that way. Um, and from there, finding a lot of very helpful tools and answers and questions and contemplations, uh, and slowly through that, there was integrating process or a healing process, of starting to, like, for example, when I first read The Power of Now and I started to do meditation and such, I could get into a deep place of peace, um, in that moment of meditating. And then I go to work. At the time I worked in a pizza restaurant, and you would go out the window, and I'd get into the anger and reactivity and all this stuff, and stress, because restaurants especially, there's so much time pressure. Um, and So then it kind of dawned on me, well, meditating in finding that deep peace is lovely, when I get off work, but it would be really cool if I could bring that into my work, because I'm working 50 out 60 hours a week. Like, why not be at peace during that 50 to 60 hours a week if it's possible? Um, and it was possible. It took a tremendous amount of practice and study and contemplation and patience with myself too. That's an important one, not being too hard on ourselves, because there's this delicate balance, like moving towards that sort of idea of more consistent peace, but then also not getting stuck in perfectionism and being really hard on ourselves. Um, but yeah, I did that for a number of years, and with the studying and everything, got to a place where I really felt consistent peace in anything I did, whether it was going. One of my big realizations where I realized I had started getting these practices down is I took my daughter to Chuck E. Cheese. And I remember years ago, I would take her, and it was just so much stimulus, and all the games are turned up on high, and the kids are running around, and it's just chaos. And I would get so stressed. And this time I went, and it was actually, I felt very still. The chaos was still there. I was just in a state of peace. And I was kind of surprised by it, like, wow, this is weird or different. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I'm really onto something here.
Thank you
So
so
yeah,
much.
yeah. Then I just started sharing it, and here I am.
That's
I
awesome.
think it's
Thank you, Courtney.
important because I think so many people go through those same types of experiences and don't know what to do or don't feel like it'll ever change.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's made you a really fantastic um, spiritual teacher for me personally. I think that, knowing that that's where you've come from and how you are now. Sometimes I just listen to Ryan talk because I'm like, how does he talk? You can tell that he's completely 100% present in the moment. You can just tell when he's talking. Just blows my mind sometimes.
I used to have a lot of anger too, actually. That was one of my big ones. A lot of resentment that I had to address and heal. Um, just throwing that out there.
Good for
I think
people to
I
know.
think reality is like, we're born into this world. You don't really get a solid, how to on how to get through life, and you experience all these.
Uh-oh. Froze again.
Oh no. I don't know what he was going to say. Don't know what he was going to say that time.
Sounded like
Um,
maybe he was going toward the root of like, we're all dealing with all these different things that keep coming up along the way. And you have to try to navigate all of it at like the same time, especially as you get older and things kind of build or, you know, um, yeah. I mean, it is very powerful to heal yourself. And I know we've talked about that before in previous episodes.
yeah.
I think that's where he might have been going with it. I could be wrong. He should pop back in here.
Yeah, I like that he also the first thing that he said when I asked, tell us about your path, how'd you get here? He goes, well, the short version in one word, suffering. Because that really is it. It's like all humans go through it.
Mhm.
It's all everyone's is different, but we all go through it. Um, and I think it's important for people to know that even if you were in suffering or you are presently in suffering, that doesn't mean you will be forever. I was just telling Jillian that I liked that your short answer to how you got here was suffering. And it's humans.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what you remember saying last, but you had explained your path, and I think you were like getting ready to add something on at the end. And then you
Oh, it's okay. I'll just go with the flow. It's gone.
it's fine. Jillian, did you have something that you wanted to ask about his journey before we move to the next?
I don't know if I did. I've been lost.
That's okay. Sometimes it comes back to us right when we need it.
Yeah.
So in the episode, I think this is like episode 14. In our episodes that we've had, we've talked about a lot of great stuff, a lot of great things that I know Ryan has experience with, but 3 of them specifically, when I think back, really made me think of your teaching. And one was awareness, um, and then presence, and meditation. So I was wondering if maybe you could tell us maybe a bit more your thoughts on those 3 things. We've kind of already discussed them, but I know you're kind of an expert on those.
Gladly. In one way, I think they're all kind of the same thing. Really, but I've played with like, how do you define meditation? Because for years, and I've stumbled upon all these little different ways to point at it. But I think like fundamentally, a very important piece of it is this moment right now that you're listening. This is present moment. This is where, if you're going to have a meditation, this is where it happens. It's also connected to presence, present moment, presence. It's when your awareness is anchored in this moment. But also, there's I kind of like break it down into 2 layers. There's the external present moment and internal moment. So the external is like, for you, it's me speaking right now and you're listening. And then also there's sounds around you right now. My air conditioning's blowing, which we got a new air conditioning. It's very strong. It's almost too loud. But there's sounds around us. And this is our external present moment. There's the 5 sensations, and really we tend to overlook the 5 sensations or the 5 senses, or like the breath or the body, and yet they're masterful practices. As simple as they are, that's the beauty of them, is they pull us out of the complexity of mind, of thinking, of being lost in our stories and our thoughts, because that's really where all human suffering occurs, is in the mind. It's in the thoughts that are rambling on about X, Y, and Z, and everything in between. And but that leads to the other side of present moment, the internal present moment, which is inner awareness, which I would say is the deeper definition of both presence and meditation and awareness. It's the inner awareness of 2 layers. One is thought observation, what's going on in the mind. I think we're culturally starting to become much more aware of being careful of like toxic thoughts, negative thoughts, negative thought patterns that we've absorbed throughout our life, different beliefs that were pressed upon us through childhood and so forth. that we kind of carry. I mean, it includes all of that stuff, negative self-talk, complaining, fear. But the other side that's also, this, it's funny, for a while, I was really focused on the thought level of like really paying attention to the mind and all my thinking and my storytelling and all this that I do to myself. But then where it went deeper was when I started bringing more awareness to my emotional states. And that's the other part. So there's the thought awareness, and then there's the emotional awareness. And the emotional awareness is very important, for multiple reasons, especially just healing process. But it's not just how did you feel earlier or how do you want to feel. It's right now, as you're listening in, how do you feel in this moment? And just feeling that, being present with that. So like, if we're doing a podcast, I think my first podcast I did, I felt nervous. When I was first doing like talks in public and stuff, I'd feel nervousness. And so here's some nervousness and be present with it. Don't make it wrong or anything. Just kind of give it your attention. And that's a very deep meditation in and of itself. Just listening to it. It's not wrong. It's not that it's not supposed to be there, because it is there if it, right. And so that internal awareness is really what I've come to a more simple definition of what it all is: the presence and the meditation and the awareness and all these things. And again, just to summarize, what am I thinking right now, and what am I feeling right now? And those two mixed with present moment is it.
Yeah, we just talked about our last podcast last week was about meditation. And next week we're going to talk about like more so like the components of meditation, whereas last week we shared different types of meditation, because I think some people don't realize that they do have sort of a meditative practice, but it might just not look like what they picture it to be based on movies or
Yeah.
So what does your meditation practice involve? Is that what you were going to say, Jillian?
Yeah.
My meditation?
Mhm.
Well, at this point, life is my meditation. Anything I'm doing is meditation. But early on, two of my first meditations ever was playing guitar and skateboarding. This is before I knew what meditation was, but I would go to those things because it would get me out of my head, and it would get me out of the dramas of life in those moments. And it was just powerful, and I felt connected, and I felt uh, alive or something, and so I think those types, we kind of label them as hobbies, but when you're really in it, you're really doing it, like that is the essence of meditation. And if you can add in that internal awareness too, though, of like what if I was aware of what I was thinking and feeling while skateboarding and playing guitar, that would be a whole nother level. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to highlight. Like it's definitely not sitting cross-legged with the classic Instagram pictures and stuff. That's beautiful. There is something to those various things. However, the essence of meditating isn't supposed to be like, oh, I get to find peace 15 minutes a day. It's why not live in that peace, and drive in it, and just everywhere you go, families, family reunions, all of it. That's where it is to me.
I think that's the end goal for everyone who's on this, path, this journey, is that, their life. I know it is for me that, my life will just become meditation, that I'll be able to be in that full state of, awareness, or get myself there no matter what it is.
Well, now I'll just say, even in it doesn't mean problems don't arise.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean challenges don't stop. It's just how I respond to them becomes much smoother, and just accepting and allowing and adjusting, rather than like kicking and screaming and fighting it, which is just naturally what we were kind of conditioned to do. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned like not only being aware of your thoughts, but being aware of like your body more. Do you have any tips of how people can start doing that, or what that might kind of what that could be?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. I find hands or feet are good to start with. So take hands for example. If you hold your hands out and you can look at them and just kind of invite knowing, like, what does it feel like to have hands? Just kind of notice, what does it feel like to have hands? And you might feel a tingling or some kind of a very slight experience. And that what's interesting about that is because if you're able to feel that slight experience, it means you slowed down enough to, it helps you slow down, because if you're moving too fast, you're not going to be able to feel something that's very slight. So that's kind of the gift of it, is it forces us to slow down enough to pay attention to ourselves, literally. um, uh, but yeah, and another way that you can do it, Eckhart has a trick where he says, imagine what it would feel like not to have hands. And then when you play with that, suddenly your hands become more like, oh, there they are. And you can then do that. So honestly, I would recommend, if the hands one really works and it feels nice or pleasant, you feel this sort of stirring energy of sort, but like, I wouldn't think about too much with trying to label it with spiritual words or anything like that. It's better just to feel, than to get caught up in the mind of trying to figure out. But so you're feeling the hands, and then, yeah, just use that as your meditation practice. That's incredibly powerful. And if you feel like it, you could then play with moving your attention throughout the body, moving that same attention in the hands. You can actually feel your forearm and your shoulders and your head and your legs and your torso, and all the way through to the feet and toes, and even your whole body at once, which, I mean, I'm doing it right now as I'm speaking. I can feel I'm kind of also paying attention to the sensation of my body. And it kind of blew my mind when I first heard this, because it was in my 20s. I don't know exactly how old I was, but when it finally dawned on me, because it was like before that moment of really feeling my body, I don't think I was ever really in my body, if that makes sense. Like, I was never really paying attention to my physical body all that much. I was more treating it like a means to an end. If I'm hungry, I'm like, oh, I'm hungry, or and that too, rather than just giving it attention. And I have a joke that, like, the only time I ever felt my toes was when I stubbed them. Boom, oh, there's the toe, ow. And I have a theory even that maybe if I have attention in my feet more often, and I'm actually more aware of where my foot is in time and space, I'm going to be more careful not to just slam it onto every coffee table that I walk by. So if you stub your toe, it's a little sign from life saying, slow down and feel your toes. So yeah.
Love that.
Thank you for that. That was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember at the beginning of my practice, people would talk about, the option of doing, inner body awareness meditation. And I would, go through a guided meditation. I'd be like, I don't even know what they're talking about.
Mm.
Like, I could never, ever do it. You probably, Ryan, heard me say it multiple times. Like, I don't feel anything. And I remember thinking, well, that method is just not for me.
Mm.
And then probably about a year ago, you shared an inner body meditation live in one of your presence groups. And I happened to catch it live, and I did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could actually feel my hands. It was like, I just wasn't there. And looking back, thinking I was probably just so in my head during those initial ones that, like, I couldn't even think of feeling the sensations that were happening in my hands. Now I can do it, but it's funny. So there's actually two things that we were talking about before that relate to school age children. And we obviously mostly talk with teachers and parents. So I wanted to try and touch on those today before we go. One is more so for elementary age students, um, the teaching of emotional awareness, um, something that you've talked about before, um, Ryan. So I was going to start with that one and see, what do you think you could tell us more about that particular need? Oh, wait, I was looking at my question and boop, he was gone. I don't even
Just
know if he heard my question.
popped off, so hopefully he'll be back on because I want to hear this.
Yes.
This is good.
Emotional awareness is something that Ryan brings up a lot in some of the sessions that we do online. And at the secondary level, um, we've talked about judgments. That's something that, students at that age really um, need to have discussion about. Oh, there. Ryan, did you hear my question?
I did not.
Okay. So I was like, I'm not sure if he heard it before he popped off or. So the first question was, or the first need rather, was more related to elementary age students, and it was the teaching of emotional awareness. So I know that's something that you and I have talked about. So could you tell us a little bit more about that particular need?
Absolutely. And I'd also just throw in that I think there are adults in their 80s and down that could use it. We all need it. Honestly. I mean, as
I agree.
I mentioned, like I didn't get into it till my 20s. It just was maybe being male too. There's a bit of a weird cultural thing with males and emotion, but yeah, just mentioning that. But yeah, emotional awareness is so important. Um, just being able to feel whatever's coming in and to not feel that it's wrong, so important. You know, so like how that would look in schools, if a kid is feeling overwhelmed or stressed or whatever, if the teacher could recognize that and kind of not punish them immediately or tell, it kind of create this your role out, but kind of hold the space and allow them kind of guide them to give it attention rather than letting it come out through their physical action. To slow down, give it your attention. It's like they can give it their own attention. It has their own presence, and your own presence can do the work or the magic, so to speak, if you can just slow down and listen to it, listen to yourself, basically, in on this emotional level. But a huge part of that too is non-judging, not judging the emotions, no matter how intense or how trivial they might appear too. I've gotten countless emotions that on the surface didn't seem like a big deal. But, in my practice, if I'm looking at trying to heal every little nook and cranny of suffering, then even those little tiny ones of like being irritated with the Zoom going in and out, or the guy in the traffic stopping too fast or something. Those add up, the little ones, and so just being able to be present and catch those and kind of to be able to give ourselves that space to be with it. And then of course there's the very deep ones though, the deep ones that are take a lot longer to give presence to and to kind of give space around. But yeah, it'd be a beautiful thing, and I think the teachers too could really benefit from this practice, and even maybe some kind of community around holding space for each other to be in emotion, and and to just kind of like there's a term, it's okay to not be okay, and that can be very healing to know or to feel. And to be vulnerable, actually, because that's it too, right? When we're emotional, it feels vulnerable, especially to say it out loud or to admit it to ourselves, let alone others, that we feel this, that, or the other. And lastly, I would say culturally addressing these illusions of like emotion is weakness would be an important thing to challenge, because it's by far, it's the opposite. emotional awareness is strength and power. It's not weakness. So
I agree.
Mhm.
I think that's helpful for parents too,
mm, mm,
because um, I know like I give space to my students in class, and for nearly, almost all of them probably, um, you can tell that they haven't experienced that before.
mm,
Not
mm,
all, but for many, they haven't experienced the being able to just, it's okay. Like, let's give that some time. Let's give that some space. It's okay to feel that way. It's, you know, not like my, initial days of being a mom or initial days of being a teacher 20 years ago, where, you try to do anything as a teacher to just get them to stop, thinking it would be them feeling better, but it's not.
mm, mm,
Um, and so I think it's important for parents to give that space too. And that'll lead to less judgments and more being okay with being vulnerable, which is the thing I was just going to ask in my next question, but I won't ask it yet. Jillian, did you want to add anything to the emotional awareness?
I think you hit the nail on the head there with what I was thinking. And the typical reaction today, whether it's to react to yourself or to react to children, whether they're your own or your students or whoever, whatever it is to try to shut it down and try to move on too
mm.
quickly.
Be strong.
Yeah, exactly. Boys don't cry, like all of those kinds of things.
Mm,
And when you do that, just creates problems. Right? Whether it's emotional or physical or whatnot. So I think that is a beautiful practice to bring to everyone, to just be aware of your emotions, to work through them, to feel them, allow them to be. And then when you're ready, you can let them go and move on in a peaceful way.
mm.
Yeah, we talked a few weeks ago in one of our podcasts about um, the hurts
Ah,
that, when we don't stop and give them space and let those hurts heal, they, they stay in there.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
exactly.
they make our heart sick, and then that happens over years and years and years, and then you get to be 40 years old and you're having a heart attack.
Wow.
um, but I think it's really important that kids, adults too, of course, always, but that they do give space to the feelings, no matter what they are.
Yeah.
What do they feel like? Because you don't even realize that your emotions have physical feelings. Like, you don't even notice because you're not giving it space. You're
Ah,
trying to shut it down or
yeah.
end it or ignore it or, hold it in, whatever it is. And you don't even realize that those emotions are coming with physical attributes.
Mm. Yeah, which it really adds to the beauty of being aware of the body. Uh, can be a very helpful way of bringing awareness to these emotions, because some of them, especially if we're older, we're so used to being like, so quickly we just sweep it under, and we have these mechanisms of maintaining the strong image, that these type of things that we were taught and taught and taught and taught. uh, so yeah, and the body awareness can be fabulous for that. And also, crying is healthy.
Yes.
Releasing is healthy. I think more men need to hear that, although I think it's becoming more of a understood thing. But yeah.
I always tell
Agree.
my students that, and my kids, it's okay. And you can see how um, families do have those, patterns, those conditions, because, some of the kids will like be staring at the person who's crying, like, oh my gosh, why are they crying?
Yeah, and then they
Uh,
don't feel safe
yeah, they're like,
to feel their
this
emotion.
can't be happening. And it's like, give them some time, give them some space, they're okay. They're just processing right now. And then there's people who are very like uncomfortable with it. And they're almost like trying to help, but it's like they're trying to put an end to it. They're like, what can I get you? What can I do? Like, and it's just like, let them be, give them some space. Yeah, my kids finally understand because my husband didn't have that same thinking of like, it's okay to cry. um, they do understand now and they'll say, I just need a few minutes or I just need to do this, and give them space for that.
You know where
So,
else my mind went with that is like with temper tantrums.
Oh,
Like I was just thinking today, my kids were away with my parents for a night and they came home today. And when my 2-year-old walked in, he just started bawling his eyes out and he had a complete meltdown for probably 30 minutes. And, I mean, I'm aware enough to just say, I'm going to let him get it out. And I tried to talk to him, like, what's going on? Because I had no idea. But I just let him sit there. He kicked, he screamed, he did what he needed to do. And then when he was ready, he said, I want to go back in the car. Like, okay, now we can, work through it. But he had to process. But I think so often, especially when we're in public, if your kid's having a tantrum, it's like this big thing that you have to make your kid leave or get them to be quiet and everyone gets all upset. And I think that's another thing that needs to be more accepted because they're little people with big emotions and they don't know how to process yet. So that's something else that came to my mind.
yeah, that's a good one. Wouldn't that be nice socially if like if a kid starts, breaking down, everybody just stops and allows. nobody's in their head judging and complaining and, oh, how dare, oh, that's so inappropriate. And because like, that's the thing too, I think we need to maybe address more is we do emanate energy, so to speak. A sort of nonverbal communication happens. It's scientifically proven even now. Maybe if you don't like the word energy, fine, but whatever it is, it's like you can feel if you're in a safe space or if you're in this like judgmental, harsh, negative space in a group of people. And the way to fix that is actually just comes back to the meditation, it's the awareness. If you can catch yourself in that judgmentalness or that resistance of another, then you can kind of then choose, oh, maybe instead I'll hold a safe space for them. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that led to the other
Or
question.
I just want to throw in that makes me think classrooms, right? If that was a normal thing, if one kid started really feeling intense and the rest of the class practiced this art of just kind of holding space, listening in non-judgment on this internal level, and they kind of looked out for each other, like, man, that'd be really powerful. So it's not all on just the teacher, because I think too, to be fair, teachers have a tremendous amount of weight and responsibility already on them, and they too also need groups for healing or for resetting or whatever you want to call it, for emotional feeling. But yeah.
I agree. So we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but my second question was about judgments and vulnerability. Um, More so something that I think that could be addressed at the secondary level. I think that would be kind of hard for an elementary level child. I teach elementary. I think that would be kind of challenging to take apart and discuss at that level, but middle school, high school, um, really being able to address those needs of non-judgment and that it's okay to be vulnerable. you know so could you tell us maybe a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, I think the reason it doesn't quite fit in elementary is because children at that age, they're not in a lot of judgment yet. They just have that pureness about them in many ways. Unless they're in a very potentially toxic environment, then they could absorb the judgmental things a bit quicker. But especially like preschool kids, I mean, they're just such lovable little friends, and there's not all this drama and complexity of stuff going on. They're just in the moment, happy, and not judging each other at all. There's no separation really. But as we get older, it becomes more apparent, and especially, I mean, high school. We've all been through high school here, and like that's like judgment breeding ground. It's rough. Um, so, and I remember actually kind of being aware of that when I was in high school, and it kind of drove me crazy. The thing, it's such a, I don't know, it's a big obstacle, both in schools, but just in humanity. And but yeah, what's honestly fundamentally been most helpful for me is to focus all of my attention on my judgments, because that's the root. Is like it's so tempting to judge the judgers, but that's like kind of not getting the point. If we're really going to break these patterns, or this vicious cycle, we ourselves have to show other people what safe space feels like by holding non-judgment. But the way to getting to non-judgment is first looking at all the judgments and not pretending like they're not there. This sort of inner denial of like of an image we would like to portray of being, because I think everybody wants to kind of portray an image of being non-judgmental. Nobody wants to be thought of as judgmental. But meditation is, very much, it's in a way, it's stern in the sense it's like, it's not what you want to see, it's what's there. It's not what you want to be told, it's what you need to hear. Is the beauty of I would, believe is meditation and deep spiritual truths or practices. It's telling us what we need to see, and it's giving us reflections basically. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a humbling process to call out our own stuff, and to call out our own judgments. But that's the way to do it. It's to call out our own stuff. And then also, I think in a school setting would be to just sort of really remind these young adults or children, teenagers and young adults, of this whole dynamic, and how influential negatively it is to everyone else around them. Maybe even doing like little scenario experiments where kids can firsthand kind of see, oh, here's what it feels like. Or everybody, it'd be kind of weird. Everybody judge hardly right now. Okay, now everybody don't judge and see how it feels. Is there a difference in the safety of the space? Which there certainly is. But I think just celebrating that more, bringing more awareness to it, like in schools, it would kind of be like inviting this meditation practice of like, all right, guys, we're going to sit for 5 minutes and just listen to what's going on in our minds. And if you have any judgmental thoughts, any thoughts of oh, this person, shouldn't be wearing this. Oh, that person is too much of that. Just notice. Don't make it wrong, but notice it. Call it out. Call out your stuff. Now, this is interesting, is where it gets reinforced is we catch a judgment. Let's say I have a really mean judgment about somebody that I cross paths with. My mind says something very mean. Now, if I judge myself for having judged them, I generally will slip into denial about that judgment occurring in the first place. So it's very important to bring non-judgment to myself as I'm observing what's going on in my head, what's going on in my emotions, because then I can truly call it out, see it, and go, oh, this one is not healthy, or this one's not appropriate, and just allow that to be recognized. It's not me either. That's important to recognize these judgments we're carrying. They're not us. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, really, because it's your conditioning. Everybody has tremendous amounts of conditioning. And what we're doing is we're healing all of this conditioning. And every time you can catch a judgment and not judge it, so then you're healing it. You're healing that pattern a little bit. And if everybody could do that in their own little bubble, regardless of the environment, the judgments will start to dissolve rather quickly, and you'll find you feel safer in all these spaces. The other thing I'd add too, though, on the independent, to believe it is possible to be very deeply connected in your own practice to where you could still be in a judgmental environment and it won't affect you at all because you're outside of that game, that it's an illusion, it's a dream. So it's just, you're not playing in that dream anymore. You can go beyond it, even if the environment doesn't. But it would be easier for especially young adults if it was kind of a celebrated thing to begin with, in the group level, because it feels good to not be judged. Is the reality of it. It just feels good. Like, I don't know why anyone would disagree, because it doesn't feel good to be judged, and it feels good to be accepted. It feels good to be allowed and to have that freedom. It's love, really. And so yeah, but that bringing it back to ourselves, and also being really mindful of our own self judgments, such a crucial thing, because we tend, even if we're trying really hard not to judge anyone else around us, and but here we are judging ourselves for every little mistake we make, and every little moment we do yell at our kids or whatever. And it's this balance, it's this delicate balance, and not perfection, but just one moment at a time.
Thank you so much.
That is, I love that. That is a game changer for sure. Yeah.
I agree. Julian, do you have anything else that you want to ask? I know we wanted to talk about those 2 topics, but we've done that now.
I mean, I can think of a bunch of things, but we are pretty much at our time. So who knows, maybe we'll have to have a part 2 at some point. So I will turn it over to Eileen for any last comments, but I want to just make sure I've said thank you so much, Ryan, for being here. I know a lot of these topics we have talked about, but you've even opened my eyes up to more, to new methods and to new ways of thinking, which I'm so grateful for. And what you're doing is so amazing and beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us and our viewers today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I am grateful as well. I know I see you many times a week, so I'll continue to see you, but you can find Ryan at presenceprojects.com. That's where all of his services are located. And he just recently joined our Facebook group, remember, Mindset Teaching Outside the Box. So he'll be in there when we post the podcast this week. And yeah, I mean, our podcast release on Wednesday, so it'll be on Anchor and Spotify, but it's also a YouTube channel now, so you can find us on there as well. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Ryan.